On you. Guys, welcome to another episode of Product Hub. I'm Tim Demetriou from PencilPay, and today we've got a special guest, someone that we've known for a few years, and someone that is a brilliant customer of ours, but also a ripper bloke. His name's Stacy Visser. Welcome, mate.
Thanks, mate. Cheers.
So Stacey's the owner of Bean Cartel. The Bean Cartel is a coffee roaster based in the southeast of Melbourne, but they service, you know, anyone in the state of Victoria, the once great state of Victoria, and yeah. So we've got Stacey on today. Very generous with his time. So, mate, I'd love for you to just kick off and just tell us a little bit about yourself and kind of a little bit about the business and kind of where you came from.
Yep. Originally, in my mid-20s, owned and operated a lot of franchises. So I started off with Subway. We were number 21 in the country at the time. Had a few Subway franchises, 5 in the end. So we bought and sold those. It was great because we got exposure to good systems. So we never really had an idea of business at the age of 25. You want to do it, but you don't know what you're doing. So from there, we branched into a Nando's franchise. So we were the first franchisee in South Australia.
I used to work at Nando's.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I did.
It's funny.
I was a griller. I was.
Well,
and that was hideous. My clothes, I swear to God, my clothes after every shift, I almost had to throw them away. They were hideous.
Well, the funny thing is, we bought it because we come over here to Melbourne to visit Melbourne, which we do, a couple of times a year. And that sort of gave us a bit of exposure to the coffee life in Melbourne. It wasn't quite the same in South Australia. And we love Nando's. We've got to have that in South Australia. But initially it didn't quite work that well because in South Australia they've got charcoal chicken places everywhere. And I remember when we first started and you'd have a very small packet of chips and a very small chicken, and it would be $10.
It's a very different price point than charcoal chicken.
And we get families come in and go, for $2 we get this much chips wrapped around in paper, and nearly, and for another $8 we get a full chicken.
And look, I love charcoal chicken. It's brilliant. But having worked at Nando's, when you know what to order from Nando's, it just doesn't compare. It's brilliant.
It is beautiful. And then we had the first Boost Juice in the country from Janine Ellis.
Oh, really?
So, Boost Juice started in South Australia.
Oh, so
she's a Melbourne.
Wait. So you had the first
franchise.
Jesus.
Yeah. So we did that.
Did that kick off straight away?
Yeah. So the first one was 81 King William Street, and we thought, everyone's thinking, what's this? This is shakes and grinders going berserk, and they used to have good-looking crews, and it was very pumpy, and the music was going crazy, and everyone.
It was unique. It was new. It really was
Absolutely.
At that time.
But the colours, and it was everything was very corporate and very plain. And then Boost Juice hit the scene, and it grabbed our attention because we were involved in franchising. And it's one of those things when you're in franchising, you're looking at other franchises, going, geez, I want to be a part of it. Can I make money? Is it new? What's the longevity? How long is it going to last for? And that was her first store, so there was a bit of sentimental to Janine. And so it was kind of nice that we were the first franchisee. And so from that, we learned quite a bit of 3 different systems. 3 very, very different franchises. One that was very mature, being Subway. One that was definitely in its infancy, having their first franchisee. And one that was a little bit more international, given that it started, I think, in South Africa.
It did. And once they were all mature, I guess, call it 3 or 4 or 5 years down the track from when they commenced, obviously Boost Juice being the most recent.
Yep.
Which one had the best systems out of all 3?
Oh, they all had different systems, and I think from that we were able to learn, which is what we've applied in our factory now. You come into our factory, it's clean. A lot of our new branding, which we'll probably get into later, is based on franchise concepts that that I've seen, and sort of some creative juices that we add to that for our own individual flair. But they've all got great systems. I really, really, really like the Subway systems though, right? Because it made you and your staff very accountable for every single bit of ingredients that goes into everything. So you knew if your staff were using too much lettuce, too much onion, there's formulas. So it's a really, really good way of saying, we're going to teach you about food costs, without necessarily telling you that you're actually learning about food costs.
Yeah.
It's practically happening, and you can see whether or not, they're throwing out, 20 kilos of lettuce every week.
The staff don't actually have to learn about food costs. They just learn the system.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And the weights and the measures. They actually don't need to understand the economics of it.
No.
They need to understand, what do I do now? What does the book say?
Yeah. Well, so if it says, a footlong has 6 olives, and you walk past and you see your staff just throwing in 36 olives, you cringe.
Which I always encourage. As a customer.
Hang on a minute.
As a customer, I just say load them up.
And if you didn't like someone, you'd put 15 jalapenos on there. So even though the formula says only put 3,
I hate it when they skimp on the lettuce. Oh, it's fucking infuriating.
There's Jimmy again, that arsehole customer who's getting 15 jalapenos.
Exactly.
So the systems are great, and I'd like to think that we've applied a lot of that to what we do now. We also see that with cafes. Like, we can see the ones that are a bit out of control. Sometimes it's hard to tell them how to run their own business because
often there's big egos.
But often they get into business. Yeah, well, they are. They often get into business because they don't want to be told what to do.
Yep.
So it's hard from a supply perspective, especially as technical as coffee is, and so many elements can go wrong. It's hard to see them doing it the wrong way. It's difficult.
And as a business owner, you're a business owner, I'm a business owner, all your customers are business owners and all your competitors are.
Yep.
You know that you've got some ego, I've got some ego, and every single business owner, you need to have some...
I've got no ego, mate.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Maybe a little bit.
Every business owner needs to have some level of ego, or else... I just don't think they can do their job effectively unless they've got a little bit of ego. I think they need, because a lot of ego can sometimes be mixed up for a little bit of leadership as well. You've got to have a bit of confidence and a little bit of bravado, I find, to be able to lead in a way.
Yep, and drive. I mean, they've got to have some drive and some grit and determination.
Because it's fucking hard.
It's hard.
Oh.
And, how many times, our very first Subway, it took 4 years to make money. So we had 2 jobs. So my wife worked in the legal industry. She was full-time. I worked in the pharmaceutical industry as the sales rep, full-time. I had my mum working in the store during the day, and then we would finish our job at 4:30, both of us, my wife and I.
And work till 9, 10.
Till 11, 11:30, 12. In the early days, we didn't know how to close the store properly. So we closed the store when the store hours finished.
So after the store shut, then you close, yeah.
And then we worked out, we've got to start closing 2 hours before.
Yeah,
otherwise, we're leaving at 2 o'clock in the morning, and we've got to start work at 9 or 8:30. So for 6 to 12 months, we're working 7 days a week, easily 12 to 14 hours a day. We're just going home and sleep. It nearly killed us. But then eventually it started making some money. Not a lot, but Subway were great. Back in the day, they saw that we're trying really hard to resurrect a really poor business. Mm-hmm. And they give you opportunities to get other businesses that are more successful in their group.
Yep.
So the second one we bought, that was our anchor for all of them because it was such a good shop.
So that's other franchisees who are selling their store. Is that what it is?
Yeah. So the second one we bought was in Hyney Street. It was the very first Subway in South Australia. So it was already there for 7 or 8 years.
And is there a set multiple that those used to sell on? Did Subway define a multiple, or the multiple was kind of how much you would buy it for?
Well, generally you'd sort of work on 2.7 to 3.1 times profit.
Yep.
Yeah. But with good franchises that are well known and growing, you can get 4 and 5 times.
Okay.
So even when they're not worth it, because they just want to get into the system, and so they're paying a premium to get into the system.
Yeah, they're paying for brand, right?
100%.
Yeah.
And opportunities.
Yep.
The only negative, I guess, if you're looking at growth phases of franchises, and probably why
they fall off pretty quickly, don't they?
They can, but you've got to get in and out, I guess, reasonably quickly, make some money, and then maybe keep 1 or 2 for cash flow down the track, because they can cannibalise each other, some franchises.
As in they've got way too many stores.
Yeah. So when you're store number 21, you've got your next competition might be 10 k's away.
Yep.
But all of a sudden, as the popularity grows and the marketing funds grow, and the confidence of the brand grows,
and the greed grows.
Yep. The franchisors go, hang on a minute, 2 k's down the road, there's an opportunity.
Yep.
And they go, Stace, do you want to do that one? And you go, oh, I can't be bothered. I don't want to do that one. I'd rather do something somewhere else. And they go, well, if you don't do it.
Yeah, they must scare you into doing it, right? Like, or, you know, which is, look, it's a, you know, I mean, if it was your business, you probably end up doing the same thing.
Well, look, as long as you don't have profitable stores
that are being
unprofitable.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So what would happen is you might have a store doing $15,000 a week, making really good money. They make you sort of open one up 1 to 2 kilometres down the road. Your 15 grand goes to 11. The other one's only doing 8 or 9. Collectively, the franchise is getting 19, 20 grand's worth of.
But now it's losing.
But now you've got 2 stores, 2
sets of costs, and 2 sets of headaches.
Yeah,
a fucking nightmare.
And you're probably making just as much as one, maybe even less.
Less, definitely less.
So it just depends on the maturity of the market. So we sort of got in and got out within 10 years. And I think a 10-year cycle is pretty good for a really fast-growing brand.
How do they so I mean, I've got a Subway down the road from my place, which I go to occasionally. Do you know much about how the Subway franchises are going now? Because I feel like it used to be a lot more popular than it is, but that might just be me being in my own little world.
Yeah. So back in the day, South Australia and WA used to go berserk, and then Queensland was sort of sat in as third, and it was WA, SA, Queensland. And I think, you know, not putting those states down, but Melbourne and Sydney, there's a lot more
choice,
cafes and restaurants and options.
Quality options,
so first thing I knew when I came to Melbourne 14 years ago, you go to these cafes and you get beautiful paninis and baguettes and, you know, unbelievable grab-and-go food that you just didn't get in South Australia. Now, over the recent years, it's catching up, no doubt about it. And that they're more unique stores now in those regions than in Melbourne. But
everything in Melbourne, I find, or a lot of the places, very cookie cutter, very you know, someone will do it really well. They get a couple of write-ups and broadsheet and all the rest of it, and then it's just.
But as long as they haven't saturated certain areas, there's still points of difference. And I think that's where coffee comes in. Down, you know, you can add as a point of difference in cafe land by not being the same as everyone else.
Yep.
But yeah, so with franchising, you know, we sort of wrapped it up and.
How long
to come to Melbourne?
How long ago was that?
That's 14 years ago.
Yep.
So my daughter was 6 and my son was 3. So it was a good time to bring them because they didn't have massive friendship groups. They're still too young. They wouldn't know any different.
Yep.
Perfect time. And we also sort of did it just in case, you know, as they got older and they wanted to go to Melbourne and Sydney and maybe we couldn't afford to do that because of the price of living. We thought it was just a good opportunity while they're young to put them into a place that was maybe where the business future was for them.
Absolutely.
At the time, or, you know, from a careers perspective.
And you've got I mean, you know, I know you pretty well. You've got a really, really interesting story about when you came to Melbourne and everything that happened when you came to Melbourne first up. Yeah. Now I don't know how much you want to dig into that here, but I think I think it's a really good story, really good lesson, and really good, you know, really good to understand the some of the downsides of actually fighting that fight as well, as opposed to saying I'm out. You know what I mean?
Mate, I nearly had the out moment a few times even here. Excuse me. We came over here. We still had a cafe in Adelaide, and we were having some issues with the landlord because we were 2 years into a 10-year lease, but they were going to knock the whole building down to build specialty shops, and we were the most vocal tenant in saying, no, you can't do that because of our lease. And in the end, they said, you argue white, we'll argue black until you got nothing left. And I was a bit green and said, no way, I'm going to fight you. And they fought me till I had nothing left.
Yeah, they do.
And we had to walk away. So we were ready to go to the Supreme Court over this. And the whole thing was, had we won, the other 7 tenants would have got the benefit from it. So they were going to crush us. Now, I would have walked away at my age, knowing what I know. Back then...
So what kind of year was that? Or
that was we would have been here for 12 to 18 months. So we just bought a house.
So about 12 years ago, right? 13 years?
Almost when the GFC hit.
Okay, so this is 2008/9, and so that's one store. So how much you reckon you put into that legal fight 12 years ago on one store?
Well, we had another site elsewhere that if this failed, that meant that one was going to go down too. Mm-hmm. So that went down at the same time. We probably poured in $400,000 or $500,000
into the legal fight,
all up.
So I guess that's a. I think what people don't understand when they're getting into a legal stoush is that there's actually no winners. No. You can win the legal stoush, but at the end of the day, you're completely fucked money-wise. And the reality is the other person's fucked, so they're not going to be able to pay your costs. So you're effectively putting all this cash into something for and you think at the start, yeah, this person's going to pay my costs if I win. Yep. I'm in the right. Never happens. Because the other person's always broke at the end of it, and they just can't pay the cost.
When you fight a multinational, like we did, this was a drop in the ocean for them. But it was an experience. We learnt that, in order to fight fire with fire, we had to go from one solicitor to a solicitor and two juniors to a QC, and they've got a QC, two barristers, two solicitors, a junior, and you're looking across there.
And they've got an in-house general counsel who can bang out the work because they know it well, as opposed to you having to go and explain it to all these different lawyers who you spend all this money with because they need to learn the case. Yeah. And every single second that they pick something up, they're being charged. When they might have a general counsel that's on staff for $100,000 a year, $150,000 a year, 100%. Or whatever it is, who can just bang out the work and work all day, and it's a fixed cost. Yep.
Yeah, and that's all accounted for anyway, so their story rolls on. But it was one for me I thought I could take the lease literally, right? And the clause that we got done over in the end, right, and this is where it was a black and white argument, is we had a demolition clause in the contract, which I learnt from the subway days. Have a demolition clause in there because if they want to demolish the building, they'll have to pay you out or relocate you or do something. There's some recompense to it all. They chose to go down the path of calling it a renovation. So, fuck me. I thought, so now we've got to go and put renovation and demolition in the contracts. And contracts
are actually, when you think about it, they mean nothing. It's all about, at the end of it, it's all about, do you have the will to fight this person in court? When it's always a bad decision to do that. It's actually always a bad decision. It's never, ever been a good decision.
Well, it started off 70-30 in our favour. That was the advice. Right? It always is. But it started off at 70.
I love it how the advice is. It's never written though, is it?
No.
The advice is never written.
don't hold us to this, but it's 70-30.
Exactly right.
And you're like, oh wow, we're going to win. Then as it all unfolds a few months later and all these fees are accrued for both parties.
Accumulating and just...
Because if we lose, we're going to pay theirs. So even if we walk away towards the end, we've got to negotiate not having to pay their fees, which is... unbelievable. Even when you say
it's more lawyers as well, by the way, because it's and it's also after you lose. So after you know that you've lost, you still need to spend money on lawyers.
It's out of control. So, and then I'll never forget it. And they said, "We've just received a fax." Because it was back in the fax days.
Hang on, lawyers. By the way, lawyers are still receiving faxes. Yeah, they are. They're still now.
It's crazy. So they go, "Oh, we've just received this fax," and once I tell you about the fax, I thought, why wasn't that presented at the beginning so we could have stopped all this? This apparent fax brought the case to 50-50, and I go, what does that mean? They go, well, now your chances of winning are only half, so it's gone from 70 to 50. Then the advice from these guys from there was, this is the cost of the other party to date. So now they started presenting costs. This is what the other side's likely to be. This is what you've accrued to date over here. If you lose, this is the total amount. And I've gone, this system sucks.
The system's built for lawyers, and it's built for the establishment to be able to just keep going. The fact, if you've ever been through the process and you see the fact that you can go to court and they call it a mention, that you can go back to court again and nothing happens and it ends up getting adjourned. Then you go back again, it gets adjourned again. And then you say, all right, I want to get this sorted, and we're gonna go for a speedy trial, right?
Yeah.
We're gonna go for a summary judgment or something like that, and then you go to a summary judgment, and the facts are clearly one way or the other, and the judge is not prepared to do a ruling, and then you set a trial date, and then once you set a trial date, then what happens is the judge says, oh, you guys should go and mediate. Then you go and mediate, and you're almost at a solution, and the judge says, do you need more time? So you lose your trial date, and it's this thing that just keeps on going, and the only person that makes any money is lawyers.
Well, the mediation, the mediation side of things is, it doesn't happen often enough, and it doesn't happen fast enough, right? Because had we been able to sit in front of each other, or even in two rooms, and nutted this out in 24 hours, maybe come back the next day, it wouldn't have, the total cost to me wouldn't have been that much, and we could have come to the same conclusion.
As soon as there's a
we
writ,
didn't need to go to court to do it. We could have done it in mediation.
As soon as there's a writ, so as soon as you've actually put it into court, lodged it, and it's got, these are my grievances, these are all the points, these are all the facts, what I consider the facts, it should happen the next day. You should be in mediation the next day with someone running the mediation.
Yep.
Because usually, I mean, one side can't see the light, this side can't see the light, and you need someone to try and pull you back in together, and it should happen immediately. But if they did that, the lawyers wouldn't get rich. So, of course, that's never going to happen.
Well, we basically, we were right in the throes of doing a renovation on our house here in Melbourne, the first house we bought, because we rented for the first 18 months to 2 years. And the GFC hit at the same time. So I've had GFC hit. We thought we were going to get X amount for the property. We thought they might have solved some of our issues over here with the legal side of things. We'd already had to close down 2 cafes at the end. So what we made in 10 years of Subway, we lost everything and our house and minus 500 grand in 18 months. In 18 months.
So when you've lost everything, and so this is 10 years ago?
12 and a half.
12 and a half years ago. So you lost everything and you're negative 500.
Correct.
Right? Do you choose at that point to try and dig yourself out, or do you choose at that point to say, all right?
So what had happened is the banks basically took everything at the time. We kept our nose clean with keeping the debt there.
I know what it's like, trust me.
Yeah. Well, we kept our nose, because the business was registered in 1999 through our trust.
Yep.
I said we had to keep that as clean as possible the whole way through, because that now is our only asset. Mm-hmm. So believe it or not, that 500 grand loss was our only asset. So if we walked away,
losses carried forward type of thing.
Yeah. So the next 500 grand of income we earn, we pay no tax on. So my accountant said, that is your only asset, Stace, because in effect, that's probably worth net 300 grand to you, right? Do whatever you can. We couldn't get the dole, right? Because there was a period of 12 weeks before you can reapply. And no money whatsoever. I had coffee vending machines. So I had a run of, I bought some coffee machines, put a coin machine on it, and went out to a lot of nursing homes and aged care centres. We did coffee vending. So my wife and I, with 2 young kids,
went out to the nursing homes, just like Joe Biden.
I'm not that far away from it. And so we're living off coins from vending machines. So we had 20 out there, maybe 14 working properly. But then what we did is, well, they tried to repossess the car. That was a hilarious story in itself. That was our only asset. The guy comes to the gates and says, I'm here to repossess the Mazda CX-9, right, which was our only asset, and we probably had 15 grand left in it. And I said, well, mate, it's not here. My wife's got it. And he said, well, I've come to repossess it. And I said, well, I'm going to ring my wife and tell her to go and park it at a friend's house. And you won't ever know where that car is.
And go and fuck yourself.
Yeah, basically. And he was really awesome.
Okay.
He said, look, I'm just doing my job. Here's my card. I said, just let me have a chance to sell the car, because we need a car.
Yep.
And he said, put the ad in and email it through to me to show me that you've actually committed to selling the car.
Yeah.
And I said,
and they can back off a bit.
yeah. He goes, buys us some time, and then we ended up buying a Mitsubishi 380 for $12,000 at
What's a Mitsubishi?
it's like a Magna.
Yeah, okay,
I say Mitsubishi Magna to my wife, and she goes, "No, it's a 380," because the 380 was the upmarket version of the Magna.
Actually, there's a very funny story about me driving a Magna on the way home from Cuba one night, but I won't cover that.
Well, mate, there's nothing sexy about a Mitsubishi Magna.
No, there's not.
So we had this. We had the car, and we had 13, 14 vending machines that were actually working properly, $2 a pop. And that was it. So, and I'm sitting there thinking, there's no way. I don't really know. I don't really know how we're going to do this on just vending machines, like, to be honest. And the biggest driver for me was, having been in business for 10, 12 years prior, I didn't want to go back and work for someone. That's just me.
Oh, it'd be hideous.
So whatever we needed to do to get through it, if we missed out on the property market for 7 or 8 years before we re-entered about 6, 7 years ago. So 5, 6 years of no property. But what I did was I bundled up coffee vending machines into runs of 10. So I might buy a machine for $5,000, set up a run of 10 for maybe a husband and wife who wants to do something extra on top of their income.
And sell the asset.
So that 10 I'd sell in a delivery run, and it would take someone 4 or 5 hours on that day to drive around, clean the machine, take the money out, give it a quick service, move on to the next one. And I sold 2 for about 110.
Two runs.
2 runs.
Yep.
So that gave me about 60 to 120 grand. And that happened in 8 months. I'm like, whoa, bit of relief. We're not living on coins anymore. So that money, I guess we were living off, but we're trying to keep some of it to put into a business. So from there, we had people interested in our coffee through the vending machines, which I thought was bizarre because it's a vending machine. Why would a few cafes or people refer you to a cafe?
The coffee that you're putting in the vending machines, were you roasting it yourself or you get it externally?
Yep. So someone else is roasting it. And, we'd use their brand in the machine.
Yep.
But people were saying, geez, we love the coffee in the machines. We're trying to get good quality, powder milk and all that sort of stuff. And the chocolates were beautiful. But then automatic coffee machines started coming with fresh milk. So we started getting into the office market. So a little bit of equity we got allowed us to get borrowings from a finance company. High rates, non-banking.
They don't. They're 20 to 50%.
Can be, and we were lucky enough to be involved with a company called Geared Finance.
Oh yeah,
unreal guys, and if it wasn't for them,
Geared Asset Finance. Is it Maddie?
Yeah, Matt Taverner.
Yeah.
Unreal. They've been one of our machine finances for 10 years now.
Yeah,
no. They gave us a start when a lot of the banks wouldn't.
Yep.
And we had to pay higher rates, but we knew that, right? And still to this day, we're still pumping machines through Geared Finance.
That's brilliant.
But that gave us a start. We got into the office market, and then from the office market, we started getting referrals out into coffee land. Now, we were doing Fair Trade and Rainforest Alliance coffee back then. Our brand was called Organico. But Organico Prima it was good for the offices, but it wasn't really sexy for the cafe market.
A cafe isn't going to buy that.
No, well, we did have a few. And that's when I thought the cafe side of it's very different. But there's higher volume and I guess less labour intensive.
Cafe?
As a supplier.
Long time to win a customer.
It is, but they're generally pretty loyal.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
But in the office market,
it's a big shift. It's a big shift to go from coffee supplier to coffee supplier. It's a significant change to the way you're operating.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's very hands on in the automatic coffee world because you've got to clean the machines often. So there's a lot of training, a lot of repairs.
But that also means that you're constantly in front of the customer, right?
True. So you do keep those customers for a long time too. But a lot of office coffee goes up for tender. So you could be great for 3 years, and then all of a sudden they go out to tender again, and you don't get it, and you've got all these machines sitting around.
It's just because you've got corporates and that's how they operate. Yeah.
A new person comes into a role. He's the new purchasing officer, wants to make a name for himself or herself, and
wants a bunch of new suppliers.
Yeah, we've saved the business this amount of costs, and they go, "Oh, you're an unreal purchaser." And all of a sudden, loyalty can go out of the window, but you can get recontracted by because you obviously own a lot of the equipment by that stage. You drop your price and recontract. So I enjoyed that side of it, but I really started to enjoy the coffee side of it, and the cafe side, and also wholesaling, like private label. Also, private label guys on selling our coffee. So we had someone roast for us, and we started getting into more commercial quantities. Then once we built it up to a certain level, we started doing it ourselves. And when we started doing it ourselves, we changed the brand again from Organico Prima to the Bean Cartel, which has been the last 6 years.
When you were setting up the roastery to start doing it yourself, it's a significant everything, a significant investment, significant premises you need.
Yep.
It's the equipment, the premises, it's the processes, it's the, what goes in, people probably don't realize what actually goes into roasting coffee. The digitization that you have and need now to be able to make sure it actually comes out properly at the other end, and you got to bag it up and blah, 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 blah. Then you got to source the green beans at the front end. Can you run through that process and then talk about some of the challenges that you had actually getting a bag of coffee at the end of it ready to go to a customer?
Yeah, I can. We had someone else roasting for us. So they were roasting our beans that we sourced, but roasting it to their profile in our bags, and we were distributing it, which we've got quite a number of customers we do that for now, ironically, which is why I've got a really good affinity with those clients, because I was that sort of client. And someone was contract roasting for me. But then you're doing that, and then you secure a premises. You've got to get 50 to 100 mil gas lines run from the street, where you're the only one in the whole complex that needs that to run a factory.
So it's not existing.
It's not existing. So it's a lot of pre-planning. Like where we are right now, was just dirt. So when we spoke to the landlord was very good about building this for us and proactive in getting the gas line through here before they laid the foundations.
And I'll just chime in there. So one of the things that Stacey's got, I'd be really keen for everyone to check out the video of this podcast, because what we'll do is we'll actually go downstairs and we'll do a full video of exactly what it looks like downstairs in the factory, because I think that once people see the size of the operation, the size of the machinery and the workflow, they're really, really amazed at the level of technology that's required.
And that was the big thing. I mean, I got to see how someone else ran their roastery.
Tommy, just quickly, can you put a note in that we'll go and record downstairs?
Yep. I had an opportunity to see how someone else ran their business, and then thought and got so much education from them on it. But in the back of my mind, I kept thinking about the franchises and how we can meld the two together to make it look and run more systematic.
Systems, processes, yeah.
So I already had that idea. I went to Sydney. IMF took me to Sydney to have a look at some other
International Monetary Fund.
I wish. Geez, I could do for some now when we're buying green beans. It's gone out of control now. So we went to Sydney, had a look at a couple of roasteries that had their equipment in there, so I got a guide of how their setup was, and which was really invaluable to see space, like what sort of size warehouse I needed. Mm-hmm. And so we got this 40, 50 square metres bigger than one of the ones that we looked at, because it was just a bit tight.
Yep.
One of the hardest parts of it was you have to pay for everything as it's getting manufactured overseas, 50% up front, the balance before it comes. It doesn't come for 2 to 3 months even when they send it. Then you've got to bring it here, set it all up, test it, run it. So it's 12 months of extra costs.
And you'd probably chew through a significant volume of beans getting everything right.
Oh, there's another story on that one. Oh, mate, it was... Yeah. And we were using a brand Batty elsewhere, and we thought that it'd be pretty easy just to come across here and use an IMF and extrapolate the profiles across to the IMF roaster, no problems. No. So for 4 months, I reckon we filled the bin outside, the big commercial dumpster bins. We're filling them up with coffee nearly every day, every second day, until the bin company rang us and said, Can you stop filling up the bins with wasted coffee?
Because
you're bending the forks.
They can't get oh, it's so heavy.
It's so heavy. You're bending the forks on the trucks.
Jesus.
Oh shit! Where am I going to put all this coffee?
I was going to say, like, usually those bins are not filled in a really economic way, but coffee bins are pretty small.
They are. Yeah. Let's just say, in one of those bins, it's quite dense. Like the kilos were high. It'd be half a ton sitting in the bin. So I probably ripped through 40, 50 grams worth of coffee that were wasted because we can't send that coffee out to clients when they're used to the coffee that they were getting from us originally. Mm-hmm. It would have been suicide. We would have lost all these clients. So it was killing me. And
I think that's probably that's one of the other things with coffee is, you know, you talk about these, you know, we talk with suppliers all the time, and if you're a producer as opposed to just a distributor or supplier, you've got this art versus science thing that constantly goes around, and you can have two machines that are the same brand and that are supposed to be the same, but they just work differently, and like you need different settings and all the rest of it. There is an art to everything in terms of production of this stuff, whether it's beer or spirits or coffee. You still have to produce it, and it still has to be unique, and it still has to be your way on your particular machine in your particular climate. And there is a lot of tinkering that goes on. It's not just this is the method and this is how it's going to end up.
It's out of control, and because you know how your coffee tasted previously, and then all of a sudden you're in a new premises and you're tasting the coffee, you go, "This is shit. I can't get this out to my clients. It tastes like crap." So that happened for 4 months, and mate, we got down to 20 grand left.
Who's your first customer? Who's the first person that said, "Yep, I'll take your coffee and I'll use it"?
Well, that was when I was actually doing back in the vending days when I was doing office coffee.
Yep.
So National Australia Bank was my first big client. We did each of their floors for office coffee, and then Royal Brighton Yacht Club was another our first cafe.
Yep.
And they're still with us, 12 years down the track,
awesome.
Which is great, and they're great crew down there. So yeah, I mean, look, we're probably down to our last 20, and I started shitting myself again because I had flashbacks of losing everything again, and that was December 4.5 years ago. So luckily, when we got in, green bean pricing was at a reasonable level. Unlike now, yeah, absolutely. We contracted a lot of good coffee with some great suppliers for long term. So 12-month contracts, 24-month contracts rolling, and that really taught me a lesson in budgeting for fluctuations in the Australian dollar, cartage, frost that might happen in big countries like Brazil. So we had some good steady input costs, but we only had 18 months of good business here, and then COVID hit. So we have generally moved into our first factory ever. 18 months in, we're going, how good's this? We're finally it's the best business we've ever had in our lives. It's all us. It's our brand. It's everything we've always wanted. No franchisor.
Low amount of staff. It's not like running a cafe with 6 chefs and 10 front of house or 15 front of house. You've got
No, staff that don't leave. Very, very low turnover. An intimate team, like a family, loving it. 18 months. Oh, hey, good. How good's this? We're reversing everything that's happened. Fucking COVID hit, didn't it? Right, and mate, there I am again going. We're going to lose it. We're going to lose everything. So we went into defensive mode. So for 2 years, it was all about trying to keep our existing clients happy. Zero growth, making sure our input costs are low, using the incentives from the government wise. The government did a brilliant job in propping up a lot of businesses and staffing. We kept all our staff through that phase, and
I also think one of the reasons why you sit there today and you say, okay, government did a good job is because it wasn't just the government that did a good job. You'd planned for this 5 years ago, right? It's clear that you planned for this 5 years ago. I know because, we've been talking for probably 3 years now, thereabouts, right? And I think about 4 years ago, you said to yourself, all right, we need to start to automate all this shit because we're taking orders over the phone and it's a fucking nightmare and everything's a mess. And then someone doesn't enter the order properly or they don't enter it at all. Something gets missed. And you've got this entire process all the way from getting a green bean come through the door all the way through to, okay, I need to deliver this on a certain date, a certain type to this customer in a certain area and try and make the economics work. It's a lot. So can you tell us about the software that you went and started building 4 years ago, and you've been iterating that over the time?
Every 12 months we're refreshing it and updating it and doing things. Well, it started with we never had any family holidays.
That's right.
We had no family holidays because we had no money.
Yep.
Right? We're trying to rebuild the business and keep the family going and send them to school and all that sort of stuff. Which it was never private schools or public schools. Just had no money. So when we started to come into some money through this business, I took the family to Thailand, first overseas trip. The four of us. And each morning, at 7 o'clock in the morning, they're having breakfast. And I said, I've got to take the phone orders. So from 7 to 8:30 every day, well, 4 days, because we Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. I'm taking the phone orders, writing them down, putting them on an email, sending them to the team so they can pick and pack. We weren't making enough money really to have staff to sit and take orders. It was myself, a driver. Back then there was no roaster because we're getting it contract roasted elsewhere. So the idea started back when someone else was roasting for me.
So you had all the bulky fixed costs that you would expect to have in a business. You kind of wanted to keep it as variable as possible until you got to a point where you knew you had enough revenue coming through the door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So for me, it was like I was really pissed off that the first holiday we take from 7 to 8:30 every day. I'm taking phone orders and setting it up, and then at the end of the day, the staff would email me all the deliveries for the day, and then I have to sit on Xero and manually input every invoice on Xero.
Yeah.
There's another hour and a half every night. So 3 hours a day, just 4 days of the 10-day holiday. I'm doing that. And I'm for fuck's sake. Couldn't relax.
Like just so your customers can order stuff.
Just so they can order, and we get it out to them.
Yeah.
And we don't stuff up everything. So in the end, what we did is we developed an app that I thought all the issues that presented, every single one of those issues needs to go away. So, and I don't want more staff, right? Just for this particular thing. And I don't want someone doing a hybrid role that's not in their area of expertise. So we developed an app that basically sends a link out to the client the day or 2 days before their order. It's a call to action. They have to hit that link. They hit that link, up comes the drop box with only their products. They choose their products. Goes into everyone's iPhones, everyone's iPads, everyone's computers in the factory and out on the road. They scan it with their phone. So we had, QR codes before QR codes were a thing in COVID, right? So we were using QR codes for all of our stock. Then they'd go out, do the delivery, and get the cafe to sign for it and go into the cloud. So it's got, Jenny, manager of this particular cafe. There's a signature, goes into the cloud. So we've got a copy for the owner of the business if he's not there, a copy in our system because often you'd get, in the old way we were doing it, in triplicate, invoice book on triplicate.
A carbon copy
stuff. Yeah. You wouldn't get sometimes you didn't get a signature and they go, we didn't order that, did we?
Yep.
Go, yeah, you did.
Yeah, it's fine when things are fine, but when things are not fine, oh no, we didn't order that.
We never ordered 40 kilos, but you've ordered 40 kilos every week for the last
forever.
6 weeks.
Yeah.
Or 6 months.
It was just that week.
That week it was quiet. We did 10.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm eliminating all of that. But the beauty of this system is we can create delivery runs. So we can just drag and drop where they are on a run. If someone runs out of something that's usually at the end of the day, we flip it and we make them the first delivery and we're still in order but in reverse back to front. We can change the runs. We can put them onto another day.
One of the things I love about the system is the accountability that it gives to staff. Now, so one of the things about the system that Stacey's built, which we know when we started talking, and when Stacey came on board PencilPay, and he was telling us about the system, I love the fact that all the stock was there and available in the warehouse, but someone had to check it out themselves. Yep. So rather than having a warehouse manager sitting in there and giving out the stock and that type of thing, orders come in and you've actually got the driver or the sales rep, yep, or that's basically the same person a lot of the time. Comes in, they have to check out all the stuff. So it's everything's barcoded or QR coded, and they check the stock out, put it into their van, so you know exactly what's driving around, how much stock's driving around everywhere. Yep. And then when they go and drop it off, they have to check it out of their van, so you know exactly how many kilos are in that van at any one time, which which does limit a lot of things. And one of those things is one of your staff members fucking you over, because often they'll sell this is what I've heard happens from time to time. Yeah. They might sell product and they might sell it for cash to people. And I mean, we like to think that this stuff doesn't happen, but the reality is we're dealing with people here, and people do stuff.
Yep, it's the same as putting your hand on the till. You
at a cafe,
serve a coffee and a sandwich, but you don't charge it and put the money in your pocket. Mm-hmm. It's no different in wholesale. So it's about setting up systems to try to foolproof that. It's not always foolproof, and that's why we're always evolving our system. Mm-hmm. Stock wastage was the thing that we found. We needed to tidy up, because if stock had been past a date or whatever, it needed to come out of the system permanently so that it couldn't be on-sold. So there's a few little nuances that we worked out over time and still are. But the beauty of this system is it also connected to Xero. So the idea of me coming, being 5:30, 6 o'clock on a holiday or in the night time, and having to input all these invoices or have a bookkeeper inputting the invoices, they went, because the app, as soon as they signed for it, as soon as it went into the cloud, it connected to Xero, created the invoices exactly the same as what they've ordered, and all I have to do is go into the back end every night. They're all sitting there in draft. I'll just go click, 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 send. And I'm happy to do that anywhere in the world. It wouldn't worry me. Click, 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 send.
And not only does that obviously decreases the labour that's to take the order, but also it removes every single mistake, because
100%.
Because humans just make errors. Like, it's just how we are.
Yeah.
And entering stuff into your accounting system, you want it to be the right stuff. Yep. But if you don't have to enter it, happy days.
Well, often in the early days, we might not have enough decaf in the car. All of a sudden, we've just run out of decaf. Sorry about that. And then I have to drive all the way back to the factory for an hour or 40 minutes and go back out to the client. All of a sudden, instead of being able to do 20, 22 deliveries in a day, you can only do 13. So what we've been able to do is almost double the amount of deliveries we can do on individual days, which makes the productivity of the staff member elite.
And you've done that by streamlining and automating your runs. Can you tell us through how you did the runs?
Yeah, so it's all in areas. So if a cafe, based on the closeness of one cafe to the next that's in our system, mm-hmm. right? So if we start to get new clients in other areas, we might have to say, right, well, Timmy's Cafe is usually on a Monday. That's probably at the end of the run, furthest away from where we started. We might put that on a Tuesday, because we've just picked up a few clients that are on the Tuesday run. We'll add to that Tuesday run. So eventually, Monday is sort of capped at anywhere between 19 and 22 deliveries. You physically can't do anymore. And that's the other thing that COVID did to cafe hours. Once upon a time, the cafes would still be there at 4:30 in the afternoon. They're hardly there past 2:30, 3 o'clock now.
So you had a limited. You had a limited amount of hours where you could do deliveries.
Yeah, so we had to get bigger vans so that they wouldn't have to come back halfway through a run and refill the van again. Mm-hmm. So medium wheelbase and a long wheelbase van, so that you can fit more in. We added milks, almond milk, soys, mm-hmm. all those bigger bulky products in, cups and lids, which we never used to do before COVID.
And I know you do your own chocolates and teas and all that type of thing as well.
Yeah, we've got a fantastic chocolate and chai supplier that does private label for us. So it's their chocolate in our bags.
Yep.
Which gives it a little bit more uniqueness. But mm-hmm. we also sell a lot of their chocolate as well, so that there's theirs and ours together. It gives the clients options. But yeah, with the delivery runs, our Mondays through Friday are really streamlined in terms of not driving from one point to another and having too big a gap. Like 50 minutes in between one cafe and another, or 30 minutes is just...
Economics don't work.
It kills you. You've got to pay for everything along the way.
You have to pay for the staff member to drive it. You've got to pay for the car. You've got to pay for the fuel. Yeah. And right now, that's pretty expensive.
It's horrendous, yeah. Which is something, down the track when we're looking at electric vans. It's just started to come out. We want us to see a little bit more of them before we go down.
Yeah, I was going to say the electrics it's a great concept in practice, but when you're trying to power something that needs grunt,
yep.
I always think about the idea of people talking about, one day we'll be able to put everything on electric. And I think about the idea of getting a cement mixer on electric. They'd probably be able to deliver, I don't know, one or 2 kilos of cement.
I don't know. I've driven Mel, our national manager. I don't know if she's like Nostradamus, but she asked to get a fully maintained company car rather than an allowance. And I said, what do you got your eye on? And she was driving around an Alfa Romeo potted up thing that was chewing through the petrol. And she said, can I have a Tesla? And I never thought of it. And she goes, I've already done the sums. It's going to cost more in repayments, but it's only costing me $10 in electricity to fill it up. So she was smart enough to calculate the cost in dollars for the petrol and say, well, let's put that into a better car.
Yep.
And I went, why not?
Here's your annual cost.
Yeah, here it is.
So for anyone who's looking to get something better out of their boss, present a good economic picture.
Absolutely. PowerPoint presentations work well with me. Even my son. If you want something, I want to see a PowerPoint presentation.
I need to see return.
So now when he wants something serious, he says, Dad, I've got a PowerPoint presentation. Oh, fuck me. Let's have a look. But and the funny thing is, the reason why I say Mel's Nostradamus, 4 weeks after she got the Tesla, petrol prices went from $1.10, $1.20 to $2.30. So she's coming thinking she's a guru. Look how much money I've saved you.
Did she get one?
Tesla?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's got one.
There we go.
Yeah, but what I was going to say that you talk about the cement mixer. That Tesla does 0 to 100 in about 3.7 seconds.
Oh, they are. Control. They're seriously powerful. One of the things. I've sat in a few of them and been in a few of them. They're fast. They're really fast. But I question I think it's a really good technology, but I question how much better it is for all the stuff that it proposes to be.
I agree. No one really knows where you're going to put all those batteries.
And it's pretty, to produce all that electricity, it doesn't just come out of the wall.
No.
There's stuff that goes into it, and burning coal is one of those, because let's face it, renewables, what's that, 3 or 4% of the energy that we use is renewables, and the rest is coal and gas. So I think people need to, educate themselves on that. But anyway.
I'm totally with you. I just think, at the end of the day, it's a little bit like what we've done with the IMF roaster. It uses 30% of the gas that the Brambati roaster was using.
Yep.
And Brambati are better now, like much better now, because...
Oh, they all have to be, don't they?
Everyone has to be, yeah. But who knows? I think the government's going to bring out more incentives and for businesses. I'm already getting emails now saying, can we do an energy audit of your business?
Yeah.
And you can borrow X money to put solar panels on, and what credits you get from the energy go towards repaying back the solar panels over 20 years. So what they're trying to... There's a really good initiative in, I think, there's 3 major councils here that are doing it, and we're in Monash here, where you can go and get all this stuff done, energy-saving water systems, and you're not paying for any of it. It's coming out of the grid that you're generating yourself. So they're getting better at it.
And for you guys, I mean, for a commercial operation, it's actually really good because you guys operate during the day.
Yeah.
If you
good point.
The issue with a lot of solar and that type of thing is if it's residential.
Yeah.
Imagine in 10 years' time when everyone gets home from work at 6 p.m. right, and then they go and they plug in their electric car. There's going to be a enormous stress on the power grid, and there's going to be no battery power there trying to, that can support it. So residentially, I reckon there's challenges, but I think commercially, I think it's a must.
I can't wait for everyone to have a windmill on their house.
Oh,
Look out. The really rich people have 5 windmills.
And then the windmill, and then the wind stops.
Living in Melbourne, you find the wind never stops here. So back on, I guess on the app side of it, it just took all those negative elements that we experience with customers. We don't want to lose or have arguments with customers over things that are beyond our control.
Yep.
And to take them away and just make it about the coffee and supply and the relationship and the service and not everything else. And
to make all the other things completely transparent. So completely transparent and everyone's responsible for what they're responsible for. And it's all clear and open.
I had so much pissing myself laughing the very first time the client rang me and said, we didn't order that much. And I go, you did? And there's the order from the system. And in the cloud, Johnny signed for it. Here's a copy. Conversation over.
Yeah.
Got off the phone like, how good's this? The system's really good. I really do love how it integrates with Xero. Because the other point about it integrating with Xero is, even though they're all in draft, what I can do is click on each of the client, just click on and go, they used 40 kilos this week. Click on another one, go, they only used 10. Hang on a minute, they've been using 50 kilos every week. Why are they only using 10 this week? So that you get a bit more of an idea of their business.
This is one of the important things where us being a software company, we're about automation, but I always tell people that just slow down with the automation sometimes, because sometimes it's actually better to not automate certain things. And this is a classic example where if you automated every single invoice that gets created and they just went directly through draft once a customer orders, you wouldn't have the visibility to see how many kilos a week your customers are ordering.
100%.
And you know that if they're ordering 20 and they used to order 50, someone's sniffing around trying to take your customer, or you know there's something, or their business is struggling a bit, so something's going on. So I think that this whole idea of everything being perfectly automated the entire way through, all the way from cradle to grave, I think is a myth, and needs to stay a myth, because you do need some manual checks along the way.
Well, that's a good point, because initially when they spoke to us, when they were building the app, I said, do you want this to automatically go from Xero as soon as they sign for it? Bang, you don't have to worry about a thing. And they thought that was a good idea. Initially I said, yeah, absolutely, that sounds brilliant. Then I can be anywhere I like, and I'm not going to get hassled like I did in Thailand, right, when I was with my family. But then as the weeks went by, I said, no, I want it in draft. I want to be able to have a look at it and see what the issues are. And even today, like if we load up a new client, I've seen a desk from the staff that have loaded up their card on the back end. The decimal point's gone in the wrong spot. And so, for example, if a kilo of chocolate's $12, it had $120. So they do the delivery and they've got 5 chocolate at $120. They bill the client $600. That straight away the client's going to go, what the hell's going on here? They usually would laugh at it and say, what's going on? Right? And that's happened a few times. But it gives me an opportunity to go through the bill and go, well, he usually only gets a bill of $1,000 every week. Why is it $2,000? And then you go back and say, hey, guys, whoever entered that last card, can you just put the decimal point in the right spot? Or
else you can pay the customer's bill on their behalf.
That's it. Or you're basically working out the double checks of manual inputting, because you can't completely avoid anything manually, but it's what you just said before. It's but
you have no visibility.
100%.
And then you lose a customer that you've spent 3 months trying to get. I mean, it's worth doing those checks for.
But even if it can go the other way, most people are generally honest. We've had clients say, hey, where the decimal point's gone the other way, $2.50 for the coffee instead of $25 or $26. And they've said, Stacey, you've undercharged us. Oh, shit, thanks for that. Then we go back and correct it. But what we don't want to do is we don't want to have a situation where we've undercharged a client and no one's told each other or no one knows. So there still has to be other checks and balances, just not as much work as what we used to have to do.
I want to get into talking about input costs, because I know that we've had a number of conversations about input costs, and I talk with every single business that uses Pencil now. That's where the conversation is, and it doesn't matter what you're in. The input costs are killer. But I imagine with your type of business, it's even worse because of the logistical operation about getting stuff from overseas to here in a timely manner. I think that's an enormous addition. Then you've got all the deliveries and stuff. Can you talk about the cost of your raw green beans?
Yeah, for sure. So, back in the days when, we were moving into the new factory and I started doing 6 to 12 month contracts, we had to establish some credibility with our green bean suppliers. So we had to be great payers, have good relationships, keep business flowing consistently to a number of groups, not just all heavily with one particular group. What that allowed us to do is they allowed us to do 12-month contracts. So there was enough confidence for me to book up stock with these guys as if I'm booking direct from the origin, except I'm doing it through my green bean brokers, green bean suppliers. And their wealth of knowledge is fantastic. I ring them up and say, hey, I'm running low on this. What's happening in the next 3 to 4 months? Can we book this in? Mm-hmm. Just to try to keep the cost down. But since probably July, August last year through to now, contracts are shorter because the volatility is there. Australian dollars dropped significantly. Transport costs, getting a container brought across from Peru or Brazil was $800, $900. It was upwards of 12,000. Yep. Containers sitting on the water, not in the ports when they should be in the port. So a 6 to 8 week stock turnaround from country of origin to in this factory was turning into 14 to 16 weeks.
I was overseas 2 weeks ago, and I came back through Singapore. And as you're flying over Singapore, there's no shit 500
containers,
500 freight ships just waiting.
And they're circling almost like a plane coming to land. And the costs of running that,
there's 500 of them all in this port, 500, and they are it's an amazing sight to see.
Not just the container costs, but all the transportation costs sitting on the water,
fuel costs, staff costs,
labor, refrigeration,
labor to run a freight ship. It's pretty
So until it opens up freely, and until there's some stability there and continuity, it's still going to be volatile for a while. The other side of it also is, of course, Brazil last year had to have a frost in September, October, right in the middle of all this crap. So, Brazil sneezes, the world catches a cold because they're the biggest supplier of coffee. So if they go into negative compared to their previous years, supply and demand, people have to get their coffee from other regions to substitute it at some stage. So the flow on is enormous to other countries of origin. Other countries are limited with their stock that they pull out of the grounds. So there's pressure on those prices, so those prices go up. Mm-hmm. So Brazil, at the same time as COVID and all the transportation issues, it couldn't have been a worse combination in the history of me being in this game.
Yeah, the
out of control.
The concept of supply and demand alone as an economic principle is a killer. But add to that the fact that you've got every single government in the world that decides that, we're going to make energy really hard to come by now, and we're going to stop production of energy. Yeah. Okay, cool, no worries. But, everything's going to cost double, and energy is the input into fucking everything. Everything we do, the cost of oil, gas, whatever it is just, is going to elevate that. And I just think the fact that the governments couldn't start to say, okay, go and produce a bunch of energy now, because what that's going to do is drop that input. We've still got the supply issue, and it's a supply driven problem right now. Yep. Right. It was, back a while ago. It was a little bit about demand from a consumer perspective, but now the commercial element is just a supply problem. People just can't get stuff to sell. They just can't get it on shore.
We had Peruvian coffee that was supposed to be here in September last year, and I booked it in June, thinking I'd afford, covering my bases. I got it at a good price. It didn't come to end of January, beginning of February. So to keep my blends, to not compromise my blends and to keep them consistent, I bought Peruvian coffee at spot pricing, spot pricing is what it is at the moment, like what it is uncontracted, sitting on the floor, and they sell that based on the C market, right, which is coffee's traded on the C market, US dollars per pound. So that's volatile as well. It's like gold.
So you have to be able to predict the future, like really, like months and months in advance.
Months and months and months. And,
and that's got cash flow implications because you got to pay for it.
Yep.
But like then you got to pay, no doubt, some of it at the time when you're ordering it.
Well, using brokers takes that element out of it, that side of it. But they've got to have containers on the water, replacing the ones coming in, replacing. All of a sudden, you take 8 to 12 weeks out of the equation that no one in the world can change. For about 3 to 4 months, we had to pay spot pricing, which was 1.5 to 2 times what my contracted stock was.
It's very hard to go back to your cafes and say, "Hey guys, it's 1.5 to 2 times."
Yeah. Oh, by the way, just for this 3 months, we need to add another $10 or $5 a kilo to your coffee price. It's not going to work. And
then after that, it'll come back. But then I mean, it's impossible. No, you have to wear it. You have to wear some of it, right?
You do. So we're probably wearing 60 to 70% of it. We're just going through a transition phase at the moment with our clients, where for the first time in 10 to 12 years, we are raising our prices slightly, but because the market's so competitive, we've got to be careful with how much we raise our prices. So we're copping a lot of a hit.
And it also doesn't help when you look at it from the cafe's perspective when a new government comes in and raises the minimum wage by 5% off the bat like that. Yeah. That does not help. Does not help things.
That doesn't help the cafes, right? Because you raise your price, they've got wages up. Just naturally, they have to increase their pricing right across the board. So we've been trying to educate our clients by saying, look, if we raise your price by $2 a kilo, for example, and you're selling coffee at $4 for an 8-ounce cup, if you raise your price by 20 cents, you'll make between $7 and $12 a kilo more, right? So it's time to raise your prices right across the board. But people are fearful that if they raise the price, they're going to go down the road and go to $3.80 coffee.
Yep.
Right. And that fear's real, but it's not quite reality. People like the person they're coming in to see every day and the coffee.
It's not reality. Like the reality is the fact that this barista knows my name and what coffee I have. Yeah. It knows how many sugars and how hot I want it. All the nuances that Melbourne coffee drinkers like, they know it. And fucked if I'm going to go down the road to someone different for 20 cents. I mean, it's just not. It's actually, they're not living in reality if they think they're going to lose a customer because of an extra 20% rise.
They may lose some, but are they the clients that they wanted to keep in the first place? Yeah. Probably not.
And they're not the clients that come every day.
No, they're not. They'll come in once a week. Yeah. And now that people are tapping their cards now as well, and they don't physically have the cash in their wallet, it's not quite.
Yeah, the whole breaking another dollar problem. Yeah.
It's a lot easier. You're not. I've got $20 today for lunch. Oh my god! Is it going to be 25? People are tapping their cards.
It's really taken away like a level of price sensitivity from consumers. Yeah. In a way.
Yeah, 100%. So right now, I think it's a big reset at retail.
The Great Reset.
It is a great reset.
Yeah.
It really is. But everyone has to do it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I think if wages go up collectively right across the board, it'll probably solve a lot of that problem, but it's not going to happen. Next year, I think we'll see. We won't see coffee prices from a wholesale perspective anywhere near like it was pre-COVID. It just will not happen. You can't have a 1 in 100 year experience and expect it to go back to normal. I think this is going to take a long time to wash out, but I think next year it'll settle down a bit. You're now we're really relying on Brazil to have a bumper crop. So they're going to the trouble now of putting through the whole harvesting process from growing the beans to harvesting the crop. Cameras now that show each stage so that they
can pick things up quickly.
Yeah, to see what's going to happen down the track.
Yeah, okay.
And we keep getting feedback that this Brazil crop's going to be all right.
I was going to say because if you're a speculator on the price of coffee, having cameras on so you can actually predict. Actually, interesting. Very interesting way to make a little bit of coin.
Well, the problem is though. Now, we hope the positive from the potential recession that might happen next year. The positive, I guess, from a supply perspective is that's generally when prices start to turn a bit. right? Because demand's obviously slowed down big time. We noticed for a short period of time when Russia invaded Ukraine that there's 6 million bags of coffee not going to Russia because of the embargoes. And overnight it went from a crazy $2.80 per pound down to about $2.50.
Yep.
Right, so just extracting 6 million bags away from Russia filtered through to the rest of the
Gave the rest
world.
of the market a bit of a reprieve kind of thing. Yeah.
So we saw an adjustment at that particular phase, and we were like, okay, well, that's there to stay for a while. So there was a little bit of relief. So it brought the price back to still a very high level, but it dropped it from something that we hadn't seen for 14 years.
Yep.
So it's interesting.
And and probably the last thing I want to cover off is where do you see in the next little bit, because over the last 2 years, no doubt you've seen some cafes fall off and go out of business.
Yep.
Is it as many as you thought? Is the first question, and then the second question is, do you see that accelerating now?
Look, I think for quite a long time, like I'd say pre-COVID, for about 3 or 4 years, there was a massive influx of people coming in from overseas buying cafes to get residency. So, if there was a really good cafe and then another one 300 or 400 metres down the road and they're both doing really, really well, all of a sudden you got 2 more right in the middle of them. That was just one side of it, but also more people got into wanting to own cafes. So there was a glut. We had a cafe in Armidale at the time, and 3 doors down, they were killing it. We came in. They decided that if we took 30, 40 kilos a week out of that system there, that they couldn't survive losing 10 to 20 kilos a week. It was a bit like a Subway franchise, one opening up a kilometre down the road. So it's not dissimilar to this in the coffee game. Yeah,
and we both know from having run cafes before, you got to get your coffee up to a certain point, and then
it's profitable.
Then that's the only way it becomes profitable, once it's over that threshold. And if you drop anywhere around that threshold or below it, you're cooked.
Yeah, and especially when coffee at the retail end is quite profitable for the cafe owners. It's high labour
at scale. Yeah,
it's high labour, and it's low dollar purchase, $4 or $5, as opposed to sitting and having a $25 meal. Right, that's equivalent, 5 or 6 cups of coffee. So it's high turnover for coffee to make the money, but
if you can extract a lot of cups out of that barista per hour that they're working, then it becomes economical. But you need to extract that amount of cups on per average hour type of thing.
100%. The other thing that we noticed through COVID and post that period is COVID has a lot of the weaker cafes have gone out of the system. And I guess it's given reprieve for some of the ones that have remained now. They're becoming a bit better, more buoyant. The city's still a bit of a tough one.
Yeah.
And we've got clients. We lost 17 of 21 of our clients in the city, never to return. So that suburban versus, we'll call it urban or city. Yeah.
That's been a revelation, hasn't it? All these suburban cafes smashed it, obviously, because no one's going into the city anymore. But the government's effectively decided we're going to put every single cafe out of business in the city. That's what they said.
So what we're seeing now, though, we're seeing a lot you've got a lot of even good restaurant cafes. They would open up for breakfast and lunch, and then be prepared for dinner and have a great restaurant and bar trade. What we're seeing now is a lot of those businesses are not doing breakfast and lunch. They're just opening up for dinner. Right? And they're still very popular at night time. The problem you've got a massive floor space.
You're paying rent.
Rent.
You're paying rent in the morning and lunch.
Yeah. So what we're seeing a lot of is bigger venues during COVID splitting it in half, or shutting down and moving it close by to a smaller venue, rejigging their operation to a smaller operation, maybe getting rid of breakfast and lunch and doing dinner. There's people we'll still travel to go into the city to have favourite restaurants
and booze,
and a few drinks, absolutely.
And we know that let's face it, a restaurant, if you got chairs, you have to sell booze.
Yeah.
Otherwise, very hard to make money.
So, and a lot of the cafes that are remaining at the moment, they're just not doing the volume that they used to do. And when you speak to them, they say things like, it's great in theory that everyone's back in the office, supposedly, but now what's ingrained
is work from home. So you've got someone that's full-time, 5 days a week in the city, normally there. A building's got 10,000 people in it. Well, a lot of them are saying you can have Friday or Monday off. So they're saying Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays are quite busy, or Mondays and Fridays, it's a waste of time.
I was talking to a cab driver who picked me up at the airport the other day because I came home on a Friday night. And I said, "Oh, have you had a busy night?" Da da da. And I said, "Oh, Friday nights are usually busy. People out in the piss." Da da da. And you know what he said to me? He goes, "Not anymore." I go, "Why?" He said, "Everyone works from home Mondays and Fridays now. So the whole idea,
Friday night drinks,
the whole concept of after work drinks is finished. It's gone."
So there's a bit. And I don't work in offices anymore, but that was part of having a really good culture.
Oh,
have a few drinks together,
absolutely.
Go out for dinner as a team. Now it's like everyone's on Zoom meetings.
Interestingly, I was reading an article the other day about this whole idea and concept of people working from home and what that does to their career progression. Because all of the bosses of all these businesses are giving people the option to either work from home or to because they feel like they can't push it yet, can't push everyone back into the office. But what they're finding, and they did a bunch of surveys and that type of thing, what they're finding is the people that are going into the office are the ones getting career progression because they're creating the relationships with all the middle management, which is awesome, which is brilliant because they're actually going in and putting in the effort. Yeah. And I think you need to have some face time with staff and with leaders, because otherwise, how do you know what's expected? It can't just be this Zoom thing. We're not we're humans. We need look, feel, touch, all that type of thing.
I think you're right. Yeah, it's pretty hard to get a promotion if you don't really know what pushes certain people, if they're never around.
If your boss doesn't like you, he's not going to give you a promotion. And the way he gets to like you is by socializing with you somehow.
But also stress testing people in the workplace. I mean, you really see who the performers are when you load them up with a heap of work, right? And find out if they respond.
Yep.
Are you going to get cooked in 5 minutes, or are you going to see it out? And I just don't think you can do that in a perfect world, having people working from home. Certain industries, work from home, and then from working from home, go out and travel and see clients. Like, I know my finance guys at the moment, one of them I deal with, he's moved out to Colac. Mm-hmm. And I still transact with him like normal. But I had a relationship with him before he moved. That's the other difference too.
Yeah.
You see, whereas he wasn't the guy from Colac that was introduced to me today for geared finance. I was introduced to him when it was all face-to-face. And
some businesses really, we'll call it profited, but some businesses COVID was good for. Like, I look at our business. I used to go out and see every client face-to-face early days. We only launched a few years ago, but I would come out and I'd just go and see every client face to face, because a lot of the people we dealt with, they had never heard of Zoom at the time.
Oh, I never did.
But then it just flipped, and it meant that rather than having 3 appointments booked at the start of the day and 1 cancelling on you, so you only go and see 2, you can have 8. You can talk to 8 people throughout the day and have a good conversation, and you share your computer screen. We're in software, so it makes sense that you'd share your computer screen. So it actually lent itself to that. But
you're a perfect industry,
A lot of other industries, though, I mean, it's hard.
Yeah. It's just interesting to see where relationships go. We're in a really relationship-based industry in the cafe game. The point of difference between us and another coffee company could actually just be the rep that sees them every week. Mm-hmm. And as soon as a particular rep leaves your company, often a lot of relationships go with that representative at the same time. And that there's 3 other reps sniffing around. That's 3. and the rest. It's very competitive. So it's all relationship based. There's a lot of good coffee out there. So it's a bit of branding, good coffee, good pricing, significant relationship and service. So you might be able to see in the background. This, and we'll probably finish up with this. You guys have just done a massive rebrand from where you were. Yeah. Can you give us just a little bit of info of why did you do it, and number 2, what kind of benefit do you reckon you're going to see from it? Yeah. Well, look. I think every 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6, maybe every 4 or 5 years, having a rebrand invigorates your team, and you yourself, you get excited about what you're doing again, and you don't go through the motions, and you start thinking about new ideas and new things, and it gets exciting. New websites, new brand packaging. We get to go out to see clients with something that's completely different than what we had before. So it may also help us go back to clients that have said no in the past. Mm-hmm. It could help, open the door again for clients that we really want to get on board.
It restarts the conversation.
100% it does. And it rejuvenates the whole team. It's amazing to see this process and new branded cups that we're about to launch, new boxes that the bags go in. Really different boxes, colourful, to match the bags. It's really nice to see our staff getting excited about it because they've got something new to go out to the clients with.
Plus, they're involved in the conversation around creation and all that type of thing.
Well, we're very collaborative. Absolutely. What do you think about this? No, I don't like it. Oh, okay. So I'm not precious enough to not take on other people's opinions because they are part of the public. Mm-hmm. If they go yes, and that was the biggest fear when we were launching this new branding is it going to appeal to everyone? Maybe not. We don't want to be offensive, and we've found it's been exciting. People have enjoyed it because it is very, very different to what's out there. So we're getting a buzz as a team. We did a lot of this in the lead up for the Melbourne International Coffee Expo, which is in September. So this has been 12 months. And so we were doing this during COVID when we had more time for marketing. So sure, we're going, well, as me, we're nowhere near as busy, oh my God. But in the background, we're like, well, this is an opportunity. We've got more time, a couple of days a week to spend on marketing, websites, content, all these sorts of things that only now in the last few months we're starting to do, and yet we started March, April last year. And
it's a long lead in to start to see the fruits from that type of work because unless you hire an external agency, you're just not going to get the stuff off the production line into the ether online onto your website, etc. fast enough for it to happen in 3 months. It's just not possible. So they are 12-month journeys.
And this will end up because of COVID, where we took a bit more time, and because we knew we had to wait to see if the Melbourne International Coffee Expo was going to actually go ahead because it was cancelled the 2 years prior. And then when there was clean air at the beginning of the year, that's when we really put the foot down on the rest of the stuff that we needed to do. So we had the foundations, but then when we knew, okay, lockdowns are not going to happen anymore, or hopefully not going to happen anymore, we then said, right, let's put our foot down. Let's spend the money on it now. Let's get everyone involved. Let's do this by the 27th of September. Get all our ducks in a row. Let's hit mice hard.
Sometimes it takes a deadline to. It does. It takes a deadline to actually produce,
especially with time frames. Like historically, it would take 8-9 weeks to get our branded bags from design to print to back from Taiwan. 16 weeks. So at the beginning of the year, we're like, oh my God, where are we going to get the cups done? Where are we going to get the bags done? How long is it going to take the company that does our boxes? What lead time do these guys need? Are we going to have all this ready for the 27th of September? So we had to get all of our shit in order January, February, March. And we're still rushing to get stuff done. Building a stand, because this is our first stand we've ever done.
Yeah.
First stand, and it's not cheap, but we also want to make a bit of a splash.
Yep.
We don't want to go there and be like every other stand. We want to go, hang on a minute, what's on our bags, what our team's about needs to come out in this stand. And the team's nervous. It's good. They're nervous about the first International Coffee Expo.
Nervous is a good thing, I find, because when you're nervous about something, you would hope that their staff would be over preparing.
But it's also they give a shit.
Yeah,
because they want it to work. So if they're blasé about it, that would be a concern. The fact that they want to do a good job, I can already sense it in them by the way they're behaving and the way they're trying to get stuff done by the deadline and stuff they're putting on me.
As a business owner, it reinvigorates you a little bit as well, doesn't it?
Well, they're pushing me
because it's really hard to stay. It's hard to stay 100% interested. You've been doing this for a pretty long time. Yeah. Probably the longest maybe aside from Subway, probably the longest that you've had a business. Every year coming back and redoing it, and then get whacked around with COVID and whacked around with this customer goes out of business and you lose the 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks of credit that you've given them. So there's all these different factors that come into play.
Going back to what you said before, even though we've moved on to the branding side of it, we lost 17 out of 21 in the city, but you mentioned what's happened in the past, like during COVID, like how many people have actually closed their doors. What do we see happening in the future? Well, what we're seeing at the moment is some places that have just been tired of COVID and what it's done to them. We're seeing them get to the end of their lease term and just saying that's it. Mm-hmm. So that's happened a few times this year to some clients that we thought, wow, we didn't think you'd just shut your doors. All right? Or they've tried to sell it, and if no one wants to buy it, they've just said, no, we're getting to the end of the lease. Because it's been difficult to find staff. Like, there's a shortage. So if you've got a lack of baristas, a lack of chefs. The owners never worked more in their own business than now. 4 or 5 years ago, they might do 15, 20, 25 hours, 30 hours in their shop. Now they're having to be in there all the time, a lot of them.
As soon as international travellers and international students didn't have the ability to earn any money, right? Everything shuts down. Australian citizens get funded, and everyone else who's not an Australian citizen, see you later, right? So they all leave.
Yep.
That's the fact that you're losing your student base. That's your entire kitchen, and the fact that you're losing your traveller base. That's your entire front of house staff. And chefs, and it actually is.
A lot of good chefs come from overseas.
Yep, a lot of British, Scottish, Irish, certainly front of house staff in my experience, and no doubt chefs.
Yep.
But then you lose all the Indian and Asian students that come through. That's your whole kitchen, and every single cafe that you go to, that's what you see. So
when they get, tired coming out the other end of COVID, which we all did, right? The staff isn't there. They got landlords wanting to go back to pre-COVID rents.
Plus, they want their arrears back.
Yeah, and it's hard to get all that back, And then if they've got equipment finance that's been on hold, they've got to repay the gap on that. It's difficult. So I understand when some of them come up to us and say, look, Stace, we've got to the end of the first term, 5 years. We're not continuing. But then what happens there is, I guess those other cafes that are around them, they start getting busier. There's one less in the system. Mm-hmm. But it's hard because everyone you lose, you've got to grow, you've got to pick up 2.
Yeah.
Like you've got to pick up probably 3 for every 2 that go, really. And what I'm finding is just some cafes winding things up, even when everything's been a great relationship, great coffee supply, everything's been working well, and then you lose them. You're like, oh man, that part of it's been tough.
Yep.
So we just have to keep winning new clients.
Yeah, and look, there's also if someone's been a client for a long time and you've seen them, and you have actually seen them slog their guts out, especially during COVID when and as you know, there's nothing more depressing than a quiet restaurant. There's nothing more depressing, and they've slogged it out throughout that period, and for them to just give the keys back when they've put everything, they've probably mortgaged their house to do it, or they've put every cent they've got into it. That's it's pretty heartbreaking to see, but that's the unfortunate nature of what's been happening, and good businesses will remain good businesses.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know if it's a bit of PTS for me when I see this happen to other people, but I look at it and go, wow, I know exactly how they're feeling.
You know who doesn't know how they're feeling? Politicians.
Yeah, but I know.
Do they?
They don't. I mean, it is. I don't want to get too political, but it is interesting to see how one political group have 75+% of their party have owned businesses before, and another group, not the one that's in there now, might have 3% of people that are in their party ever owned a business. And it's interesting to see how the policies are different, completely different.
The policies are created for voters, and one side's got a lot of union-based voters and voters who have been employees the whole life. And you love it how politicians have been getting 5 and 8% pay rises and everyone else is getting fucked in the ass. But
Pretty
it is
well.
what it is.
Yeah, yeah. But so it is interesting. I think those that remain and don't sell their business and don't give up their lease, they hang through. I reckon in the next 6 to 12 months, things will get better.
Less places, less competition.
Yeah, I think so.
And more for them. Yeah, I think so too.
The ones that are hanging on that we supply to in the city, their whole idea of hanging on is been because others around them have closed. So they're hanging on so that.
Are they seeing the incremental burst once another place closes?
Yeah, they are. But then what doesn't help is when the government a few weeks ago goes, we're encouraging masks to be worn everywhere, and we're now encouraging businesses to encourage their staff to work from home again. And you just sit there and speak to the cafe owners, and they're sitting back going, "Come on, man, we've gone past this now."
And they like what people don't realize is that every single time that happens, it's just another dagger. Well,
but there's a significant portion of the population that can't wait to hear that news, so they can turn around and say to their boss, "I'm working from home, mate. I'm working from home."
Yeah, they call it the laptop class. People that can do their job from home. It's all well and good for them, but it's tough for those.
Yeah, no, the government told me that I should be working from home. How dare you keep me here?
Yeah,
oh, come on.
It really strips an employer of a few of their rights, doesn't it?
But then, you know what? The ones that remain, and like you said before, the ones that get promoted.
Yep,
100%. Because they're already there and they're going, "Come on, man, well, I'm quite happy to work in this environment. It's not that bad. I'm still going to survive."
Yeah, absolutely. Mate, that was awesome. Stacy Visser from the Cartel.